For centuries, the glittering jewels of the Russian Empire were whispered to be lost forever, vanished in revolution, soaked in blood, and buried beneath the ashes of a fallen dynasty. But what if the greatest royal treasure in history never truly disappeared? In The Treasure of the Russian Tsars, Patrick Voillot embarks on a breathtaking investigation into the fate of the Romanovs' legendary riches, tracing clues through archives, palaces, and untold testimonies. What he uncovers challenges everything we thought we knew about Imperial Russia's final days. In the twilight years of the House of Romanov, as the Russian Empire trembled under the strain of war, poverty, and political unrest, few figures cast a longer and darker shadow over the throne than Grigory Rasputin. Rising from obscurity in Siberia, Rasputin fashioned himself as a holy man, endowed with divine insight and healing power. By the early 20th century, he had secured extraordinary access to the court of Nicholas II and his wife, Alexandra Fyodorovna, a relationship that would become one of the most controversial in modern royal history. Central to Rasputin's influence was the fragile health of the imperial couple's only son, Alexei Nikolaevich. The young heir suffered from hemophilia, an inherited blood clotting disorder passed down through European royal lines. Even minor injuries could result in prolonged internal bleeding, causing agonizing pain and placing his life in constant danger. Desperate for relief and fearing the loss of the dynasty's future, Alexandra turned to faith and mysticism. Rasputin appeared to provide comfort during Alexei's worst episodes, whether through calming words, prayer, or simply urging doctors to halt aggressive treatments. The boy sometimes seemed to improve after Rasputin's interventions. To the Empress, this was nothing short of miraculous. As Russia edged closer to catastrophe, crippled by the disastrous toll of World War I and mounting domestic unrest, Alexandra's reliance on Rasputin deepened. With Nicholas II frequently absent at the front, the Empress governed in his name, often guided by Rasputin's counsel. Ministers were appointed and dismissed under his perceived influence, fueling widespread suspicion that a shadowy mystic had seized control of imperial policy. Among the many rumors circulating in Petrograd's salons and streets was the tale of a magnificent ruby said to have been given by Rasputin to Alexandra, a talisman imbued with protective, almost supernatural powers meant to shield the imperial family from harm. Though historians find no concrete evidence that such a legendary ruby ever existed, nor that Rasputin possessed genuine healing abilities, stories of charms, amulets, and prophetic warnings flourished at court. In a time of fear and instability, superstition thrived. The idea of a mystical ruby of Rasputin symbolized more than a jewel. It embodied the monarchy's retreat into faith and folklore, while the empire around it fractured. To critics, it reinforced the image of a regime detached from reality, governed not by reason, but by blind devotion and occult influence. Public outrage intensified. Newspapers, political rivals, and even members of the aristocracy portrayed Rasputin as corrupt, immoral, and dangerously manipulative. His assassination in 1916 was intended to save the monarchy from disgrace, yet it came too late. By early 1917, revolution erupted, sweeping away centuries of Romanov rule. Within a year, Nicholas II, Alexandra, Alexei, and their daughters were executed, marking the violent end of Imperial Russia. In 1762, amid palace intrigue and political upheaval, a new era dawned for the Russian Empire with the coronation of Catherine the Great. Having seized the throne in a dramatic coup against her husband, Peter III, Catherine sought not only legitimacy, but grandeur. Her coronation in Moscow demanded a symbol powerful enough to announce Russia's arrival as a dominant European empire. That symbol became the magnificent imperial crown of Russia. Commissioned specifically for the occasion, the crown was crafted by court jewelers Georg Friedrich Eckart and Jeremy Pausier in a remarkably short period of time. Their design broke from older Muscovite traditions and embraced a more European imperial aesthetic, Constructed of silver to enhance the brilliance of its stones, the crown was encrusted with an astonishing 4,936 diamonds, arranged in intricate patterns that shimmered under candlelight. Two hemispheres, divided by a diamond-studded laurel and oak leaf garland, symbolized the union of East and West under Russian rule. Along its borders ran two rows of large, luminous white pearls, adding depth and balance to the blaze of diamonds. Yet the most arresting feature lay at its summit, a massive red spinel weighing 398.72 carats. For centuries, this extraordinary gem was widely believed to be a ruby due to its rich crimson hue. Known historically as the Menshikov or Shah spinel, the stone had traveled through Asia before entering the Russian treasury. Its fiery color embodied authority, sacrifice, and divine sanction, qualities Catherine was eager to project as she consolidated her power. Though modern gemology distinguishes spinel from ruby, in the 18th century the distinction was unclear, allowing legend to elevate the stone's mystique even further. The crown's symbolism was deliberate and layered. The diamond-studded arches rising to meet beneath the spinel formed a cross, affirming the sacred nature of autocratic rule. The brilliance of thousands of diamonds reflected not only immense wealth, but also the Enlightenment ideals Catherine claimed to embrace: strength, order, and refinement. By commissioning such an opulent regalia piece, she reinforced the image of Russia as a cultivated empire equal to France or Austria, rather than a distant, semi-oriental power. From Catherine's coronation onward, the imperial crown became the enduring emblem of Romanov sovereignty. It was used at every coronation ceremony that followed, crowning emperors from Paul I through to Nicholas II in 1896. During each ritual in the Cathedral of the Dormition inside the Moscow Kremlin, the monarch would place the crown upon his own head, an assertion that his authority derived directly from God, not from parliament or nobility. The survival of the crown through revolution and regime change is itself remarkable. After the fall of the Romanov dynasty in 1917, many imperial treasures were confiscated, catalogued, and preserved rather than destroyed. Today, the imperial crown resides within the Kremlin armory as part of the State Diamond Fund in Moscow. Displayed behind glass, it stands not merely as a relic of autocracy, but as a masterpiece of 18th-century craftsmanship. The great red spinel still glows at its apex, a reminder of how legend and empire once intertwined. Though the Romanovs are long gone, the crown of Catherine endures, an enduring symbol of ambition, authority, and the glittering heights of Imperial Russia. Next, during the 18th and 19th centuries, as European empires expanded across oceans and continents, the appetite for rare gemstones grew into a symbol of power, prestige, and global reach. Royal courts competed not only in military strength and artistic achievement, but also in the brilliance of their regalia. Among these courts, the rulers of Russia, particularly under the House of Romanov, were determined that their crowns, scepters, and ceremonial ornaments would rival or surpass those of Western Europe. For centuries, India had been the primary source of the world's finest diamonds, especially from the legendary Golconda mines. However, by the early 1700s, new discoveries dramatically reshaped the global gem trade. In the vast colonial territories of Portuguese America, diamond deposits were uncovered in Brazil, particularly in the regions of Minas Gerais and later Bahia. These areas quickly became the epicenter of an unprecedented diamond rush. Prospectors and enslaved laborers worked riverbeds and alluvial plains, sifting gravel and sediment in search of glittering stones. By mid-century, Brazil had overtaken India as the world's leading diamond supplier. The impact on European luxury markets was immediate and profound. Millions of carats flowed across the Atlantic, passing through Lisbon, Portugal's imperial gateway, before being traded onward to London, Paris, Amsterdam, Vienna, and St. Petersburg. Diamonds that had once been rare and tightly controlled became more accessible to aristocratic buyers, enabling jewelers to design increasingly elaborate pieces. The steady supply from Brazil allowed courts to commission regalia on a scale previously unimaginable. Russia, eager to assert itself as a major European power, benefited directly from this expanding network. Though no single jewel within the Russian crown jewels is formally identified as the Brazilian diamond, many of the stones set into imperial ornaments almost certainly originated from these South American fields. The dazzling brilliance seen in ceremonial objects, such as the imperial crown of Russia, was made possible by the broader global trade in diamonds, including Brazilian output. Thousands of carefully cut stones were mounted into silver and gold frameworks, creating surfaces that captured and reflected candlelight in cathedral coronation ceremonies. The documentary's exploration of these origins highlights how imperial splendor depended on global extraction and trade. Diamonds from Brazil joined stones from India and other regions in a complex commercial web linking miners, merchants, cutters, and royal patrons. Amsterdam and Antwerp became renowned centers for diamond cutting, refining rough stones into symmetrical gems that maximized sparkle. From there, shipments traveled eastward to adorn the treasuries of empires far removed from the tropical rivers where the gems were first uncovered. By the 19th century, this globalized luxury economy had become inseparable from the identity of European monarchy. The brilliance of a crown or scepter was no longer merely decorative. It was a declaration of international influence and economic might. For Russia, whose rulers sought recognition among Europe's great powers, the incorporation of diamonds sourced from Brazil and beyond symbolized participation in a worldwide imperial system. Thus, while no single Brazilian gem bears a famous name in Russia's regalia, the collective contribution of those distant mines is unmistakable. The shimmer of imperial diamonds in St. Petersburg and Moscow reflected not only craftsmanship and wealth, but also the vast geographic reach of empire, an interconnected world in which rivers in Minas Gerais ultimately illuminated the courts of Europe. In addition, among the legendary treasures of the House of Romanov, few gemstones possess a history as dramatic and romanticized as the Orlov diamond. Weighing 189.62 carats and fashioned in a distinctive rose cut, the stone is one of the largest historic diamonds in the world. Its story stretches across continents, from the temple cities of India to the glittering court of Imperial Russia, woven with conquest, devotion, ambition, and love. The diamond's origins lie in the famed Golconda region of India, long celebrated as one of the richest sources of fine diamonds. During the 17th century, the Golconda mines produced some of the most renowned gems ever discovered, prized for their exceptional clarity and luminous quality. According to enduring legend, the rough stone that would become the Orlov once formed the eye of a sacred deity in a temple at Srirangam in southern India. As the tale goes, a French soldier who had deserted his post gained the trust of temple guardians, only to steal the diamond and flee with it. Though historians debate the accuracy of this account, such stories reflect the aura of mystery that often surrounds great gemstones. By the 18th century, the diamond had entered European markets, passing through the hands of merchants and collectors. Its path eventually intersected with one of the most powerful figures in Russia, Catherine the Great. In 1774, Count Grigory Orlov, once her trusted military commander, advisor, and intimate companion, purchased the stone at enormous expense. Their romantic relationship had cooled by this time, and some historians suggest that Orlov hoped the extravagant gift would restore his influence at court. Whether motivated by affection, ambition, or both, his gesture was undeniably grand. Catherine accepted the diamond but did not rekindle the relationship in the way Orlov may have hoped. Instead, she transformed the gem into a symbol of imperial authority. The diamond was mounted into the imperial scepter of Russia, an object central to coronation rituals and state ceremonies. Set prominently at the top of the scepter, The Orlov diamond became a dazzling focal point, its soft, domed rose cut reflecting light in broad, silvery flashes rather than the sharp brilliance of modern cuts. The mounting elevated the stone from a private token of devotion to a public emblem of autocratic power. From that moment forward, the Orlov diamond was inseparable from the imagery of Russian sovereignty. It appeared at coronations and major state occasions, reinforcing the grandeur of the imperial regalia. In contrast to loose gems locked away in treasuries, the Orlov was actively displayed, signifying continuity, strength, and divine sanction. Its Indian origins also testified to the global networks of trade and conquest that supplied European courts with extraordinary treasures. After the fall of the monarchy in 1917, many feared that Russia's regalia would be dismantled or sold. Yet the Orlov diamond survived intact. Today, it is preserved within Russia's State Diamond Fund in Moscow, where it remains one of the most admired historic diamonds in existence. Visitors viewing the scepter can still see the immense stone rising above its golden shaft, unchanged in form since Catherine's reign. And more, the splendor of Russia's imperial treasures cannot be understood without the cities and palaces that framed their brilliance. When Peter the Great founded St. Petersburg in 1703 on the marshlands of the Neva River, he envisioned more than a new capital. He sought a window to Europe. Built with Western architectural influence and grand urban planning, the city symbolized Russia's transformation into a modern imperial power. Over time, it became the political and cultural heart of the House of Romanov, a stage upon which the monarchy displayed its authority, refinement, and wealth. At the center of this imperial theater stood the magnificent Winter Palace. With its sweeping green and white facade and opulent interiors, it served as the principal residence of the Russian Tsars for nearly 2 centuries. Within its vast halls, chandeliers cast shimmering light over gilded walls, marble columns, and parquet floors. State banquets, diplomatic receptions, and grand balls unfolded beneath ceilings painted with allegories of triumph and divine right. Here, the imperial regalia, crowns, scepters, and jeweled insignia were not merely stored, but displayed as living symbols of autocratic power. A short distance from the capital lay another jewel of imperial life, Tsarskoye Selo, meaning Tsar's village. This suburban retreat evolved into one of the most lavish royal residences in Europe. Its centerpiece, the breathtaking Catherine Palace, was a masterpiece of Baroque architecture. Rebuilt and expanded during the reign of Empress Elizabeth and later associated with Catherine the Great, the palace dazzled visitors with its blue and gold exterior stretching hundreds of meters. Inside, rooms shimmered with gilded carvings, mirrored walls, and priceless artworks collected from across Europe. These palaces were not simply homes. They functioned as ceremonial spaces where the empire's identity was performed. Foreign ambassadors walking through the grand hall of the Winter Palace or the amber room of the Catherine Palace encountered a carefully orchestrated display of magnificence. Fine French tapestries, Italian paintings, German porcelain, and Russian icons stood side by side, illustrating the vast cultural reach of the empire. The jewels worn by empresses and grand duchesses during court presentations sparkled against this backdrop, reinforcing the image of a dynasty blessed with divine favor and boundless resources. St. Petersburg, in particular, became synonymous with courtly life. The city's canals, palaces, and formal gardens formed a dramatic setting for processions and military parades. During coronation visits or significant anniversaries, regalia would be transported with elaborate ceremony, linking the architectural grandeur of the capital to the sacred rituals of monarchy. Meanwhile, Tsarskoye Selo offered a more intimate yet equally extravagant environment, where members of the imperial family could retreat while still projecting refinement and authority. Among the many artistic triumphs of the House of Romanov, none captured the imagination quite like the luminous craft of Baltic amber. Harvested along the shores of the Baltic Sea, this fossilized resin, often called Baltic gold, was treasured for its warm, honeyed glow and subtle variations of color, from pale lemon to deep cognac. During the 18th century, skilled amber workers transformed this fragile material into decorative panels, ornate furniture, and intricate architectural features that elevated palace interiors into radiant works of art. Amber carving required extraordinary precision. Unlike stone or metal, amber is delicate and prone to cracking. Artisans carefully shaped and polished each piece, arranging countless fragments into mosaics that formed scrolling foliage, mythological scenes, and ornamental borders. When paired with gilded wood carvings and mirrored surfaces, the amber panels created an atmosphere unlike any other decorative scheme in Europe. Candlelight flickered across the translucent surfaces, producing a soft, golden radiance that seemed to envelop entire rooms in warmth. This tradition reached its most celebrated expression in the legendary Amber Room at Tsarskoye Selo. Originally conceived in Prussia in the early 18th century, the chamber was later presented to Russia and installed within what became the Catherine Palace. Russian craftsmen expanded and refined the design over successive reigns, enlarging the space and enhancing its decorative complexity. The result was a Baroque masterpiece composed of amber panels framed by gilded pilasters, mirrors, and intricate carvings. Over time, the room evolved into something far more ambitious than a decorative chamber. Amber panels were combined with elaborate furniture pieces, tables, cabinets, and ornamental frames, crafted to harmonize with the glowing walls. Allegorical motifs and classical figures were incorporated into the design, reinforcing themes of power, enlightenment, and imperial destiny. The mirrored elements multiplied the effect of the amber's glow, reflecting candlelight across every surface so that the entire interior resembled a colossal jewel box. Visitors to Tsarskoye Selo were astonished by the spectacle. Unlike the glittering brilliance of diamonds or gold, the amber room offered a softer, more immersive splendor. Its beauty was atmospheric and enveloping, transforming light into color and space into radiance. In an era when European courts competed in architectural grandeur, this chamber stood apart as something uniquely Russian, an artistic fusion of imported material and domestic craftsmanship. The Amber Room became a symbol of imperial refinement and the Romanovs' commitment to cultivating the arts. It represented not only wealth, but also the technical mastery of specialized amber workers whose skills were passed down through generations. Each carefully fitted fragment testified to patience, ingenuity, and collaboration among artisans, sculptors, and designers. Though history would later cast a shadow over the room's fate, its legacy endures as one of the most extraordinary decorative achievements of the 18th century. Within the gilded halls of Tsarskoye Selo, amber ceased to be merely a gemstone of the Baltic coast. It became an architectural marvel, an enduring testament to craftsmanship, imagination, and the luminous grandeur of Imperial Russia. Also, few artistic creations have traveled a path as dramatic as the Amber Room, a masterpiece born in the courts of Central Europe, transformed into a jewel of Imperial Russia, and later swallowed by the chaos of war. Conceived around 1701 by German and Danish craftsmen, the chamber was originally installed in Berlin's Charlottenburg Palace. Its creators experimented with carved Baltic amber panels framed by gilded Baroque ornamentation, producing a room that shimmered with warm, honeyed light, unlike anything seen before. In 1716, amid shifting alliances and diplomatic overtures, the Prussian king presented the Amber Room as a gift to Peter the Great. The gesture symbolized friendship between Prussia and Russia, but it also marked the beginning of the room's transformation into something far grander. Once transported to Russia, the panels were eventually installed at Tsarskoye Selo, where successive rulers expanded and refined the design. Under Empress Elizabeth in the mid-18th century, the chamber was dramatically enlarged inside the opulent Catherine Palace. Russian artisans added new amber mosaics, gilded carvings, mirrored pilasters, and intricate allegorical motifs, increasing the room's scale to more than 55 square meters. The result was breathtaking. Amber panels in shades of gold, orange, and deep red glowed beneath candlelight, while mirrors multiplied reflections into a kaleidoscope of radiance. Mosaic pictures, delicate carvings, and ornamental frames combined to create the illusion that the walls themselves were fashioned from molten sunlight. By the 19th century, visitors from across Europe described the chamber in reverent tones. In the early 20th century, it earned the romantic title, the Eighth Wonder of the World, celebrated not merely for its material value, but for its immersive beauty. That splendor was shattered during World War II. In 1941, as German forces advanced into Soviet territory, Tsarskoye Selo was occupied. Although curators attempted to conceal or protect the fragile amber panels, the room proved too delicate to evacuate intact. German specialists dismantled it piece by piece, carefully packing the panels into crates and transporting them to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, now Kaliningrad. There, the amber room was reassembled and displayed for a brief period as a trophy of war. After 1945, however, the original panels vanished. Allied bombing heavily damaged Königsberg, and as the war drew to a close, the fate of the amber treasure became shrouded in mystery. Some theories claim it was destroyed in the castle's ruins. Others suggest it was hidden in underground bunkers or loaded onto a ship that later sank in the Baltic Sea. Decades of searches yielded tantalizing clues, but no definitive resolution. Occasional fragments surfaced, small pieces of amber or decorative elements, fueling speculation but failing to solve the riddle. In the face of uncertainty, Russia undertook an ambitious reconstruction project. Beginning in the late 20th century, historians, craftsmen, and scientists studied photographs, archival descriptions, and surviving fragments to recreate the lost masterpiece. Amber specialists revived traditional carving techniques, assembling thousands of pieces into new panels that mirrored the original Baroque design. The painstaking effort spanned more than 2 decades and required both artistic skill and historical detective work. In 2003, marking the 300th anniversary of St. Petersburg, the reconstructed amber room was unveiled at the Catherine Palace. While the fate of the original remains unresolved, the recreated chamber once again bathes visitors in its golden glow. It stands today not only as a tribute to imperial artistry, but also as a symbol of resilience, proof that even when history destroys, memory and craftsmanship can restore a lost wonder to life. Besides, the first half of the 20th century plunged Russia into upheaval, and its imperial treasures, once symbols of unquestioned authority, were swept into the turbulence of global war and revolution. When World War I erupted in 1914, the capital of St. Petersburg stood perilously exposed. Fearing bombardment and unrest, officials arranged for the evacuation of the most valuable regalia and jewels to Moscow, where they could be safeguarded within the fortified walls of the Kremlin. Among the treasures relocated were the coronation regalia of the House of Romanov, including the imperial crown of Russia and the imperial scepter set with the Orlov diamond. These objects, once displayed in dazzling ceremonies, were now locked away in vaults as the empire's future grew uncertain. The caution proved prescient. In 1917, revolution toppled the monarchy and the Romanov dynasty collapsed. The new Soviet government moved quickly to seize imperial property, nationalizing palaces, jewels, and artworks. Committees of experts cataloged and inventoried the treasures, assessing both their artistic and monetary value. Some items were preserved as part of the state's historical patrimony, later forming the core of what would become the State Diamond Fund in Moscow. Others, however, were sold abroad in the 1920s and 1930s to raise desperately needed funds for the struggling Soviet economy. Masterpieces of jewelry and decorative art entered Western collections, dispersing fragments of imperial heritage across Europe and America. While the early Soviet years focused on consolidation and survival, the outbreak of World War II once again endangered Russia's cultural legacy. As Nazi Germany advanced into Soviet territory in 1941, museums and palaces faced imminent threat. Curators attempted hurried evacuations, packing paintings, sculptures, and jewels into crates bound for safer eastern regions. Not everything could be saved. One of the most infamous losses was the Amber Room at Tsarskoye Selo. German forces dismantled and transported the chamber to Königsberg, where it later vanished amid bombing and chaos. The looting of the Amber Room reflected a broader campaign of art theft conducted by Nazi authorities across occupied Europe. Cultural objects were seized as trophies, propaganda tools, or assets to be hidden in secret repositories. Russia's imperial collections, already transformed by revolution, were once again fragmented by war. Some artifacts were destroyed outright in fires and bombardments. Others disappeared into private hands or unmarked caches. After 1945, recovery efforts began in earnest. Soviet authorities, along with international investigators, sought to trace missing works and repatriate what could be found. While certain treasures were returned, many remain lost to history, their whereabouts the subject of ongoing research and speculation. The dispersal of imperial jewels and artworks created complex legal and diplomatic questions that continue to echo in modern restitution debates. Yet not all was irretrievably lost. The foresight to relocate the crown jewels during World War I ensured the survival of key regalia, which remain preserved in Moscow today. Their endurance contrasts sharply with the fate of objects like the Amber Room, whose disappearance symbolizes the cultural devastation wrought by total war. Today, the surviving splendors of the House of Romanov are preserved not in private vaults or palace chambers, but within one of Russia's most secure and symbolically charged institutions, the State Diamond Fund. Housed inside the historic Kremlin Armory in Moscow, the Diamond Fund stands as both a treasury and a museum, an enduring bridge between imperial opulence and modern state heritage. The origins of this collection trace back to 1719, when Peter the Great decreed that Russia's most valuable regalia and gemstones were to be considered state property rather than personal possessions of the ruling monarch. This decision laid the groundwork for a centralized imperial treasury, ensuring that crowns, scepters, and rare jewels would pass from ruler to ruler as symbols of sovereignty rather than being dispersed among heirs. Over time, the collection expanded to include not only coronation regalia, but also extraordinary loose gemstones, nuggets of precious metals, and diplomatic gifts. Among its most celebrated pieces is the Imperial Crown of Russia, created for the coronation of Catherine the Great in 1762. Encrusted with thousands of diamonds and crowned by a magnificent red spinel, the crown remains one of the finest examples of 18th-century court craftsmanship. Nearby rests the imperial scepter set with the legendary Orloff diamond, whose origins in India and journey through European courts reflect the global networks that supplied Russia's imperial treasury. The 20th century, however, threatened the survival of these treasures. Following the 1917 revolution, the Soviet government nationalized imperial property and conducted detailed inventories of jewels and artworks. Economic hardship led to the sale of certain lesser pieces abroad during the 1920s and 1930s, scattering fragments of Romanov luxury across international markets. Yet the core regalia, those objects most deeply tied to the symbolism of state power, were preserved intact. Even during World War II, when invasion and destruction loomed, the principal jewels were safeguarded. In the post-Soviet era, the Diamond Fund has taken on renewed cultural significance. No longer emblems of autocracy alone, the jewels are presented as part of Russia's broader historical narrative. Visitors to the Kremlin Armory encounter not just glittering stones, but the layered story of empire, revolution, survival, and restoration. Thousands of diamonds, emeralds, sapphires, and other gemstones are displayed alongside regalia, illustrating centuries of craftsmanship and artistic exchange. The collection also underscores Russia's global connections. Many stones originated in India, Brazil, or other distant regions before being cut in European workshops and mounted by Russian artisans. Each jewel thus represents a convergence of geography, trade, and artistry. Their presence in the Diamond Fund reveals how Imperial Russia participated in and benefited from an international luxury economy. Today, the Diamond Fund functions as a secure repository, a research archive, and a public exhibition space. It preserves not only material wealth, but also historical memory. While some treasures were irrevocably lost in war or sold during periods of crisis, the enduring core of the collection remains a testament to the resilience of cultural heritage. Through these jewels, the brilliance of the Romanov era continues to shine, transformed from symbols of dynastic rule into enduring artifacts of national history. What do you think about Treasures of the Russian Tsars by Patrick Voillot? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.